Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to discuss the changes that just happened to Virgin Atlantic's program. Virgin Atlantic just completely revamped their entire program. They went from being fixed pricing to now dynamic pricing. Usually when a program goes from being fixed pricing to dynamic pricing, the program ends up being worse because with dynamic pricing, you can charge an outrageous amount for award flights, but with Virgin Atlantic, they've actually done some really good things with this dynamic pricing program, and they may end up being the award program that you're going to want to use to fly over to Europe. So before I get into all the numbers, for those of you who aren't familiar with Virgin Atlantic, they are an English airline that was founded by Richard Branson. They fly to many different destinations around the world, and they joined SkyTeam Alliance a few years ago. Now in the past, before these changes with Virgin Atlantic, if you wanted to make an award booking with Virgin Atlantic, they didn't ask for an outrageous amount of miles to make the bookings, but they did ask for an outrageous amount of taxes and fees. I'm talking about close to like $1,000 each way in taxes and fees, which is something that doesn't feel good to be paying when you are making an award booking. When flying out of London, taxes and fees are always high. If you look at a program like British Airways and you want to fly out of London with their premium seats, they're also going to be near like $1,000 in taxes and fees. With the new changes, if you can find Saver Award availability, not only are the award prices very low, but also the taxes and fees are very reasonable and comparable to other European airlines. And when I say that the Saver Award prices are low, I mean like they are ridiculously low. An example would be if you wanted to fly from Boston over to London and you found Saver Award availability, it would only cost you 6,000 Virgin Atlantic miles. That's right, 6,000 Virgin Atlantic miles plus $74 in taxes and fees. This is insanely low. If you were to think of like the cash out rate of the points along with the taxes and fees, think of the cash of the points as being 1 cent per point, so about $60 on top of the $74. You're looking at under $140 to fly from the east coast of the US over to Europe in economy. That is a great deal. And the date that I found this award availability isn't in the middle of January where no one wants to travel over to London because it's freezing. I found this award availability for the end of April. Now some of you may be thinking, well that does sound like a really solid deal, but I'm someone who travels as a family and there's no way they're gonna end up having many seats available for this award price. And that's where you're wrong. They actually have many seats available at this exact same award price. On this date that I'm talking about, if you are a family and you want to travel with say 7 people, you could have all 7 people travel over to London from Boston and it would cost you 42,000 points plus $512 in taxes and fees. Think about that. Only 42,000 points plus $512 in taxes and fees. So if you sign up for one transferable currency earning card that has an annual fee, you're gonna have a welcome offer that's gonna give you enough points to be able to take your entire family over to London, and you'd have to get yourself $500 to be able to cover the taxes and fees. That is absolutely insane. Now, unfortunately, the tax and fees are high when you are leaving London. I'm talking about close to like 200 pounds each person. It still is only 6,000 miles, but it is gonna be expensive when you are gonna be leaving London, no matter which airline you end up flying with. But there isn't a cheaper way in the points and miles world to fly over to Europe than finding Saver Award space with Virgin Atlantic. Now, some of us got into the points and miles world because we wanna travel more often and for cheaper. But others of us, we got into it because we wanna travel in style. If you wanna travel in style, Virgin Atlantic has some sweet deals to fly over to England in business class. Flying out of Boston again, the cheapest business class Saver Award space that I was able to find was for only 29,000 Virgin Atlantic miles, plus about $250-ish in taxes and fees. This is officially the cheapest way to travel across the pond in luxury. Previously, this was owned by Iberia, with their Iberia business class only being 34,000 points, which ends up being 5,000 additional points. Now, Iberia does charge a little bit less in taxes and fees, but I believe that Virgin Atlantic has the best deal. Now, if you look at the cash out rate again for the business class flight, being that 29,000 points, could be cashed out for $290. You add in the $250 in taxes and fees. You're looking at a cash out rate for a business class flight over to Europe being close to about $550. Tell me that's not a steal of a deal. And just like previously with the economy seats, if you want to bring your entire family over to England, there are multiple seats available for this exact same price. You could have 7 people, which I see available, for a business class flight over to England from Boston, and this would end up costing you 203,000 Virgin Atlantic miles plus $1,800 in taxes and fees. 203,000 points, while it might sound high, is not really that many points when we're talking about 7 people in business class. Same thing with $1,800. That does sound high, but again, we're talking about 7 people in business class. People who didn't understand the points and miles world would believe that you were an absolute baller if you were able to bring your entire family of 7 or just a bunch of your friends in a business class flight from Boston over to England. And again, just like previously with the economy flight flying out of London, when you are going to be flying with a business class flight out of London back to the US, the taxes and fees are going to be higher, coming in close to like 500-ish pounds per person. So if you are going to have 7 people flying back, that's definitely going to end up being pretty expensive. But again, we're talking about a pretty solid deal. Think about what the cash rate would end up being for this business class flight of 29,000 points, giving you about $290, and then the 500-ish pounds may end up being close to like, I don't know, maybe 550-ish bucks. So we're looking at maybe close to about $850 for a business class flight from England back over to the US. I think a lot of people would end up taking that deal. It appears that the way that Virgin Atlantic is approaching dynamic pricing isn't the same as how Delta does it, to where the points end up being pretty much fixed to the ticket fare. So if the cash cost of the ticket ends up being really expensive, it's going to end up requiring a lot of points. But if the cost ends up being low, then it ends up being a low amount of points. Instead, they're following how KLM and Air France end up going about it, to where they end up being dynamic pricing, but they also have saver award availability, so you're going to get some really sweet deals. I actually like this approach that Virgin Atlantic and also KLM and Air France go about doing their dynamic pricing. Because if you have, say, a full award chart, what ends up happening is that while there may end up being some really good deals at the saver award prices, when these few saver award seats end up getting booked up, there's no more availability to make any type of bookings. So people end up having their points and miles, want to make bookings on those days, don't have access to any award availability, they become pretty frustrated. But if you end up going full dynamic pricing like the way that Delta does, while all seats may end up being available, well, now you end up having a points price that matches the ticket price, and you end up asking the question of, why even earn these points when I can just earn cash back instead and be able to use this cash back with Delta or with United or American or any other airline or any way I wish to, instead of just having it be stuck within the Delta program. At least if you can get outsized value, it could incentivize you to use this program, but if you can't get outsized value, you might as well just have cash back instead. But you end up having both. The deal seekers can end up being happy as they seek out the saver award spaces, and then the people who just want to not use their cash can also be happy because they can just grab their points and redeem it, even if it ends up not being the greatest value as a redemption. So I feel that it is a win-win for all parties involved. Now, I'm someone who is a deal seeker, and I imagine that many of you are watching this video also are, and for us deal seekers, we're gonna wanna make sure we are booking the saver award availability, because the prices that aren't saver award availability can end up being outrageous. I'm talking about like 10 times or even 20 times the price that I named earlier is the amount of miles they end up requiring to make these award bookings. And we end up looking at the tax and fees, they're not low for all these different awards, they're only low for these saver awards. When you end up looking at for the ones that aren't saver, they are back to being very high. Now, I'm not sure if it's because they just rolled out this new system, but there's quite a bit of saver award availability. I don't believe it's gonna end up lasting. I think it ends up being because the system just rolled out. But if you are someone who wants to fly over to Europe, you should definitely hop on one of these deals. Now, if you are newer into the game, you may be wondering, well, how do I take advantage of these deals? The great thing about Virgin Atlantic is that they are a transfer partner to all the major banks. So if you have transferable currencies with Chase, American Express, Capital One, and also Citi and Wells Fargo, you can transfer over your transferable currencies to Virgin Atlantic at a 1-to-1 ratio. And Virgin Atlantic is notorious for having yearly transfer bonuses to their bank partner programs. Currently, as of recording this video, Citi has a 30% transfer bonus when you transfer over your thank you points to your Virgin Atlantic account, and Chase has a 40% transfer bonus when you transfer over your Ultimate Reward points over to your Virgin Atlantic account. And with those deals that I named earlier, with a 40% transfer bonus, you don't need to transfer over 4,300 Chase Ultimate Reward points per person to get yourself an economy flight over to London. And you'd only need to transfer over 21,000 Chase Ultimate Reward points to get yourself a business class flight over to London. Now, I do know that with Chase, you do have to do 1,000 increments when you are going to be transferring over, but even still, it's crazy to think this deal can become any better. Now, if you're someone like myself who lives on the west coast of the US and you want to know what the deals are, well, what I've found from San Fran and also LAX is that there's economy flights for 15,000 Virgin Atlantic miles and then business class flights for 47,000 Virgin Atlantic miles. This is going from San Fran or LAX over to London. the taxes and fees are about the same as what they were flying out of Boston. There are definitely fewer award seats I found available from the West Coast of the US, but they do exist. I found that when flying out of London to the West Coast, the award price was cheaper, coming in at only $41,000 as compared to $47,000. The tax and fees were higher, coming in again close to about 500-ish British pounds. Now, if you're newer to finding award availability and you're trying to figure out how to find these different saver award prices, the easiest way to go about it, if you're not using any type of award search engine, would be to just Google Saver Award with Virgin Atlantic. And what should pop up as the top link would end up being the rewards checker. And this is going to show you month by month the cheapest award saver prices that are going to be issued by Virgin Atlantic. The award tickets that have that little red tag is going to be the saver award seats, and those are going to be the days you're going to end up wanting to make these bookings. Or if you're using a program like Seats.Arrow, it ends up being very easy. Just scroll over to Virgin Atlantic and then toggle to the lowest prices. So what are my overall feelings now after the changes with the Virgin Atlantic program? So even before these changes, I was already a fan of Virgin Atlantic's program and their miles. And this isn't for flying with Virgin Atlantic. This is specifically for flying with their different partners. They have a lot of different partners and some really good deals out there. I flew on ANA in first class round trip redeeming Virgin Atlantic miles. This ends up being one of the holy grails in the points and miles world because the amount of points required as compared to the cash cost ends up being an amazing deal. They also have competitive prices if you can find award availability with some of their other partners such as Air France or ITA. And if you want to fly over to Hawaii in business class from the west coast of the US, it ends up only being 40,000 Virgin Atlantic miles, which is a pretty solid deal. Because of all the partners that are connected with Virgin Atlantic and all the good redemptions I was able to get with my Virgin Atlantic miles, the last time American Express had a 30% transfer bonus to Virgin Atlantic, I transferred over an embarrassing amount of membership reward points to my Virgin Atlantic account. I did this all without any award plan to book. Yes, I know you shouldn't speculatively transfer to different award programs, but I did it anyways. So when a month ago, Virgin Atlantic announced that they were going to completely revamp their program, I immediately became fearful and thought that I made a huge mistake. Fortunately, Virgin Atlantic's changes didn't affect any of their partner bookings, so I'm currently safe when it comes to that aspect. But now when I look at redeeming Virgin Atlantic miles, I feel like there's a pretty high likelihood that I may end up redeeming Virgin Atlantic miles for a Virgin Atlantic flight, which previously wasn't end up being the case because the taxes and fees was just so outrageous. I can see many different award seats to fly from my home airport of LAX to London for only 47,000 Virgin Atlantic miles. And since I already took advantage of that 30% transfer bonus, this is only really costing me 37,000 American Express membership reward points plus about $250-ish in taxes and fees. It's really difficult to beat that to fly from the West Coast over to Europe. I really want to plan one of these business class flights over to England while it's still hot, but I've already planned out all of my international travel for 2025, and I have no idea how I could ever fit into my schedule a trip to London as well. Now, if you are going to be booking business class with Virgin Atlantic, try to make sure you get the new business class because the old one doesn't look very good, but the new one actually looks pretty nice. Again, I have no idea how long the super open saver award space is going to last with Virgin Atlantic, but if you are planning a trip over to Europe, I would jump on one of these deals before they end up being gone. But hopefully you enjoy this video. Let me know in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts of the changes with the Virgin Atlantic program? Are you a fan of it or not so much? Now, if you happen to have any questions, you can also drop that in the comment section down below. I'll do the best I can to answer it. If you happen to be interested in any cards, please check out my description box to learn more. If you do decide to use any of my links, it does really help out the channel, and I'll be incredibly thankful for your support. If you happen to really like this video, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Peace.